So one of the things that I've always been impressed with what you do personally is your kind of affection for genre films, for independent films. Have you seen any good independent films recently?
I have. You know, I mean, let's just do the general stuff first, because yes, you know, I'm a horror fan, so I've always been a horror fan, so that gives me an in. Also, as a freelance, you know, working for various people like TimeOut or, you know, Radio 4 or genre mags and so on, then it's important, I suppose, to have a speciality of some kind, so that then people can come to you because they know that that's your area. So I cover most of the horror films for TimeOut. So I would have been to Fright Fest back in August,
right?
And some of those films are now filtering through, and I think, you know, those are things I get excited about now.
Right.
The whole sort of mainstream thing and the junket setups and the way that the, you know, publicists have now got so much control over the mainstream pictures. That really doesn't interest me that much.
Because I suspect, you know, yep, I'm peaking too much now. Gosh, we're all over the place. This is the first show we've ever had like this. I would have thought that, you know, most filmmakers are a bit nervous with journalists, because, you know, you could kind of terminate a film, destroy a film, but ironically, you guys, from my experience, are the best people to get behind you, because you really do have a love for the unique, the unusual, the kind of film that normally doesn't have that juggernaut behind it, pushing it through, clearing that way ahead of itself.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, if you're in this business for the love of it, then you want to be associated with people you know are in it for the love of it. And people who are making films for the kind of money that you had on Urban Ghost Story are putting their heart and soul into it. It's very different from somebody who's come through the system, made a few pop videos, and then just kind of makes a horror movie because they think that's a stepping stone to something else. That kind of attitude I find quite distressing, because they're not really genre people. They haven't got a kind of commitment to the genre on any level. So I would prefer to try and get behind a film and give it a bit of a leg up. I mean, you've got to judge the film. I mean, there are certain films like Colin, for example. There was all that stuff about Colin, the zombie movie that got made for £48. A, we know that isn't true. It didn't get made for £48. B, it wasn't good. It wasn't a good film. It didn't have a plot. It didn't have any narrative drive. It didn't really have any characters. It was a film that I couldn't get behind, even though it was an interesting story. But it still had a story, and it still got the coverage. Whether that resulted in anyone going to see it is another thing. But, you know, my job is to give people, yes, a critique, but also context and information. Because in the end, if people have got those two things, they can make their own mind.
Right. So talk me through the process of what happens for you when a film is released. At what point do you see it? What kind of information are you given by the filmmakers or the distributors? And what makes your life easy?
What makes my life easy is having some kind of a screening very early on, because the earlier that I get to see it, then the longer I've got to pitch the idea of maybe doing an interview or getting more space, because in a magazine like TimeOut, for example, the main reviews will be 280 or 350 words, sometimes 450 words. We Are What We Are, the Mexican zombie movie, as it were. That film that wasn't a zombie movie, it was more of a kind of a, you know, we eat flesh movie, cannibal movie. That movie I heard about quite early on, and I sort of lobbied, even though I didn't think it quite worked, I lobbied for a bit more space, because I thought that in order to do justice to it, we needed a few more words. A lot of the films that I do, for instance, Sanctum, the film that came out recently that everyone's going on about because it's got James Cameron Presents on the poster, that was a terrible film. I mean, there's nothing I could have done to kind of help that film, and I got 160 words for that, which frankly was about 150 words too many. But, you know, you have got to see the film as early as possible. That's
right. What can a filmmaker do to make your job easier in terms of the materials that they can supply you with?
Well, materials. Okay, let's cut to it. This is in the Urban Guerrillas Handbook, so I apologise to anyone in advance. But the three most important things about any production shoot that you are involved in is stills, stills, and stills. We live in an age where magazines are led by pictures. Stuff is going to be on the internet. If you're going to have an interesting internet page that's going to grab your attention, you need a striking image. It's very easy to get caught up in all of the things that are involving you. You know, where are the cameras? Have we got the stock? Have we got this? Have we got the location? Is all that sorted out? Is the van done? you can lose in that the idea of somebody just taking some pictures. Once the film was finished, you'll not have those actors in one place again. You won't have the costumes, you won't have the sets, you won't have the lighting. All of those things will be gone. If you haven't got the pictures, then you're stuck. Okay. Then after you've finished the film, you've got to create a press kit. If you're going to create a press kit, you need to help the journalist tell the story of the film. If something happened during the making of the film that's a kind of anecdote or something like that, lead them into it. Give them something to bite on. Give them a little hook, something that they can make into a story. That's not always going to be there, and if you manufacture it, it's going to look bad. But there's always something that happens, especially on a low budget. You know, there's always something that goes wrong, and there's always something odd, or a little story here or there, something you found during the research that, you know, kind of broadened out the idea of the story or whatever. You know, you're not spoon feeding people, but you're giving them something, and you've got to give them information. And for Christ's sake, spell the people's names correctly, because it will come up and bite you on the bum.
Yeah.
If I, as a journalist, go into an interview and I write a 3,000-word piece in which I say this is the best horror film ever made, and blah blah blah, and this, that, and the other, and you know, you must see this film, and this guy is a major director, the only thing that they will remember if I spell their name wrong is the fact that I spelled their name wrong. So.